My friends, it's out. It's been released. In today's live stream earlier, I told you that the Americans had announced an economic operation against Iran, but the details weren't available yet. And at that moment, it was just talk, and now it's a signed document with names, sectors, and targets. The American Secretary of the Treasury took the stage and named the campaign Operation Economic Isolation. I'm going to explain each part of it to you now, because this is the news of the day all over the world. Right from the start, I also owe you 3 answers that I promised in the last live, and all 3 have already come up. And at the end, I have 2 topics that have nothing to do with sanctions. One of them is a statement from the Prime Minister here in Israel about his own family, about his family's safety, which is now going around the whole world. The other is a military exercise that happened very close to here and that almost no one talked about, but it changes the airspace picture in this region. Live from Israel, right where everything happens. Organizing as always the chaos of information for you. Welcome everyone. It's 12:40 a.m. local time here in Israel. So go ahead and hit the like button so you don't forget to do it later, guys. Make sure your subscription is still active and turn on the notification bell. This story will probably have a new chapter later this week. Let's get to what was announced, and let's take it easy, because there's a lot of new information. Inside, the operation targets 5 sectors of the Iranian economy, and each one was carefully chosen. The first is digital assets, cryptocurrencies. That's how the regime avoids the traditional banking system, moving money and digital currency away from bank scrutiny. The second is technology. These are the equipment that enter the country through illicit channels and end up in missile programs and nuclear research. The third is gold. When a country can no longer receive in dollars, it starts to receive in metal, because gold doesn't need a bank to change owners. It doesn't. The fourth is aviation. It's the parts, the maintenance service, and the fuel that keep both the civil fleet and what's left of the Revolutionary Guard structure flying. And the fifth is maritime transport. There you have the ghost fleet, the ships that change names and flags, and the companies that show up as, look at what these 5 sectors have in common. None of them, my friends, is directly the oil. They are the channels through which oil money flows in and out. The Americans stopped targeting the product and started targeting the plumbing. So along with that came the list. Almost 60 people, companies and ships were placed under sanctions, and some licenses that still authorized certain transfers to Iran were suspended. But what changes the game is not the size of this list, it's the sentence that came with it. The secretary said that the policy now is to leave no loopholes. He said that any entity that helps Iran launder money will be removed from the American financial system. And he said what the Americans expect from other governments, pay attention, is that they shut down the Iranian banned branches operating within their countries. In other words, any Iranian branch around the world, he's asking that they be shut down immediately. He summed up the goal like this: to cut off every economic lifeline that keeps that regime standing until Iran is completely isolated. And he said that previous governments only managed the Iranian problem, while this current government, the Trump administration, came to put an end to it. Then he laid out 2 paths for the regime. He said it's complete global isolation, or a return to normality. Now pay attention to what this second option, according to him, means, because that's the part nobody's talking about. Return to normality, my friends, in the words of the Americans, it's not a generous deal, it's the regime accepting the conditions that are on the table. From the beginning, the American demands are not offering an honorable exit, they're simply offering an exit. And it's the regime itself that decides whether to take that door or stay locked in the room. And here comes the question, which will probably show up in the comments and has already come up. I also mentioned it here. It will definitely show up. I'm talking here about sanctions. Someone wrote in a comment, but Cuba has been under sanctions for over 60 years, and it's far from being bankrupt. Pay attention, guys, North Korea too. These sanctions haven't brought anyone down over there either, right? I'm going to answer this now because this comparison is made by people who have never looked at the numbers of these 3 countries. Let's start with Cuba. Cuba currently exports around $1.5 billion worth of goods per year for the whole year, not per month, it's the entire year. And what sustains the island isn't the sale of raw materials, it's tourism. It's the service of Cuban doctors working abroad, and it's the money that Cubans living abroad send to their families back home. This money from abroad reaches most Cuban households. Cuba's economy doesn't depend on selling major commodities to the world, like oil. It depends on people coming in with money in their pockets. Sanctions don't close beaches, don't close hospitals, and don't stop uncles from sending money to their nephews. And now let's talk about North Korea. That country was built to live in isolation and has been isolated for decades by choice of its own regime. Their foreign trade is almost entirely with just one neighbor, and the rest comes from smuggling and digital theft. There is no global customer to lose because there never was a global customer. And now, look at Iran. Look at the difference with Iran, which is a whole other world. We can say it's a completely different world. Iran is a country with 90 million inhabitants, with refineries, steel mills, a petrochemical industry, and a car manufacturer. Did you know there's a car manufacturer in Iran? And it's not a small manufacturer. They produce around 1 million vehicles per year, the largest production in the region. And before this war, they exported close to 2 million barrels of oil per day. That's tens of billions of dollars per year. It's with this money that they pay public servants' salaries, fuel subsidies, and missile program. So pay attention to the difference that decides everything. The product that sustains Iran needs to live by ship crossing a strait. It needs international insurance and the buyer on the other side of the world paying in dollars. Each of these things, each of these four things can be blocked from the outside. Tourism can't be blocked that way. Family remittances can't either. And smuggling across land borders with neighbors, even less so. So it's not the same comparison as with Cuba or North Korea. It's not that it's completely untrue. The two is very similar to the one being used now by the Americans against Iran. And I myself have already told you this here today or yesterday. I also talked about this, that it's very similar. The system, the tool is similar. What changes is where it is being applied now. Cuba and North Korea were built to live with little and have lived with little for decades. Iran was built to sell oil to the whole world. And it's the income from this oil that is being cut off now. And here I wrap up that reasoning about the 5 sectors I explained to you at the beginning. No one needs to forbid Iran from extracting oil from the ground, because extracting it from the ground, they can do it, they don't depend on anyone. What is being cut off, what they are cutting off right now, is everything that turns that oil into money in the regime's account. The ship that transports it, the insurance that covers the ship, the bank that receives it, the gold that replaces the dollar, and the digital currency that hides the trail of all that money. Without this whole network, folks, the barrel stays down there and the money doesn't make it up here. Sanctions against those who depend on shipping or transporting oil by ship hurt much more than sanctions against an island that lives off tourism. And that's exactly why the Iranian regime is reacting this way. And Cuba never reacted like this. And now the effect has already shown up, and it's appeared in the most sensitive place of all. The Iranian currency has gone over 2 million per dollar on the parallel market. 2 million riyals, folks, that's a lot. And it's the worst level in that country's history. And the American president published a short statement about this today. Iran is entering total collapse. He posted this just a little while ago. Let me explain to you why this currency number matters so much, why it's important. Imagine now the real in Brazil, for example, or the euro trading at 2 million to the dollar. That's exactly what's happening over there, folks. 2 million reais for you to buy a dollar, okay? That's huge. When a country's currency melts down like that, it's not just a chart that changes. It's the price of rice at the market that changes. It's the imported medicine that disappears from the pharmacy. It's the public servant's salary that buys half of what it did last year. The average Iranian doesn't follow the American Treasury's sanctions lists. He follows the price tag, and that's why the currency is the clearest barometer in this whole story. And now I owe you the 3 answers I promised you earlier today. I ended that live stream asking you to look at 3 reactions. The reaction of the countries where these companies are registered, the reaction of the oil buyers, and the reaction from the Iranian side. The first one came up during the American Treasury's press conference, the same one where the sanctions were announced today. At the end of the secretary's statements, the journalists were able to ask them questions. They asked several questions, and one of them asked specifically about China, which is the big loophole in this whole strategy. And his answer was very brief. He said that Chinese entities that do business with Iran will also be subject to sanctions, with no exceptions. This is the first time that this has been said so directly, on camera, in a way clearly aimed at China. And according to the secretary himself, the American president is personally calling leaders around the world. Each of them is receiving specific demands to cut ties with the regime. The second answer is about who buys the oil. An international financial agency published today that Iranian oil shipments to Asia have practically stopped or dried up, as they wrote. And look at this detail. They dried up even before today's announcement, okay? Before this happened, the buyer didn't wait for the list to come out to step away. He stepped away just because the threat was hanging in the air. This shows something that almost nobody understands about secondary sanctions, which is what's happening now, Mr. Mortadella. These are secondary sanctions. They don't need to be applied to work. They work the moment the buyer calculates the risk and decides it's not worth buying. It's that simple. And now the third response, which is the reaction from the Iranian side. And this one is also important for us to bring up. Iran created a new body, a sort of Strait Authority, to manage the passage of ships through the Strait of Hormuz, which it doesn't really control anymore, right guys? Let's make that very clear here. And this body published a blacklist with 45 ships. These are oil tankers, gas carriers, and clean cargo ships accused of violating Iranian passage rules. The threat is fines, detention, and cargo confiscation. That's piracy, right, folks? And it didn't stop there. They also warned that they will take action against any vessel that transfers cargo at sea with any of those 45 ships. And now, pay close attention to who's on this list, because this is what really matters. There's a ship from the National Shipping Company of Saudi Arabia. There's a ship from the Logistics Division of the State Oil Company of the United Arab Emirates. And there are ships from shipping companies from Norway and South Korea. Just look at how big this is. The Iranian regime has just declared its neighbors' ships illegal. Just like that, right across the street, you know? The same neighbors who have been closing bank accounts and cutting off trade with them in recent weeks. What they did isn't a measure against the United States. It's a measure against the entire Gulf. And let me explain the practical effect of this, because it's not just on paper. A ship that gets on one of these Iranian lists becomes more expensive to insure, or it simply can't get insurance for that crossing of the Strait of Hormuz. This crossing we are seeing here. In fact, today there's more movement of planes maintaining order in this region than there was yesterday. There's more activity today. And here the strait remains exactly the same, okay? Look, without insurance, the ship owner won't send the vessel through, because any incident, even a small one, costs more than the entire trip. Imagine a small drone getting launched. Even if it doesn't hit the ship, it falls nearby. Insurance rates already shoot up. In other words, it costs much more than the entire trip. And the buyer of the cargo on the other side starts demanding a discount to be able to take on this risk. So the immediate effect isn't confiscation. The immediate effect is the cost. It's not about Iran's ability to do what it's saying. He's going to be able to confiscate everything that's there. No, it's the cost. Each of these threats makes the fuel that arrives at gas stations around the world more expensive. Back in Brazil too, here in Israel, it's already way too expensive. It's over 8 shekels. And here's the irony of this story, folks. The same regime that complains about economic war is waging economic war against its neighbors. I think this part here, my friends, I'm sure this part alone is worth your like on this live, your thumbs up, so go ahead and hit that like button. Almost 3,000 people on this live and only half as many likes. That's not fair. It's not fair to me. So leave a like, you really help me out here on the channel. If you're not subscribed yet, subscribe and turn on the notification bell. If you just happen to stumble upon this channel and you are new here, subscribe to make sure you'll get new videos from now on. And there was an episode today that shows how this whole situation can become real at any moment. The British agency that monitors maritime traffic reported that a tanker was hit by an unidentified projectile. This happened about 60 nautical miles west of Amber, off the coast of Saudi Arabia. The fire broke out on the main deck of the ship. This was earlier today. And I want you to look at the map here with me. I'm not talking about this region here, folks. I'm talking about here. Look, this region here in the Red Sea, okay? So it's on the other side of the peninsula here, right? In the Red Sea, that's it. This means that the risk is no longer concentrated only in that strait I've been showing you for months, and it's already appearing on the other route, the one that goes near Egypt and the Suez Canal. I'm not going to say for sure who was responsible, because so far not even the Houthis have claimed responsibility for this attack, but it happened today. I'm reporting the facts to you as they happened, and I'll keep following up. If I find out anything before I finish this live, I'll let you know who was responsible for this attack. Because the fighting is still going on in the Bab el-Mandeb and Mande region, in the Strait of Hormuz area. And it's not just about money on the table, folks. The United States Secretary of Defense spoke again about the military option today. He said the following. He said that the United States does not rule out the use of military force in the Strait of Hormuz, nor anywhere else. And this comes from someone who had already said that the American Navy is maintaining the blockade of Iranian ports for an indefinite period, in case anyone forgot. Besides these sanctions, the blockade continues. Look at the buildup of ships outside, everyone. It's huge. And here too, in Shabaha, there is no movement at all either. This is another Iranian port that's outside the Strait of Hormuz. It would be Iran's escape from the sanctions or the blockade. But there's no movement here either. We can't get anything out of here at all. They're stuck for an indefinite period, just like the Secretary or the Minister of War said, right? The same man who said the president has all options on the table. So put together everything I've shown you so far. On one side, the financial squeeze is tightening. On the other, the American fleet is blocking the port and escorting the ship. And in the middle, the Minister of War is warning that force remains available if necessary. This isn't just isolated sanctions. It's pressure on three fronts at the same time: the money, the sea, and the threat of force. Now, don't be fooled, folks. Don't be fooled. All of this is to bring Iran back to the negotiating table, to make Iran accept the American demands. That's the goal of all this, okay? That's the goal. In other words, the people who are there stay there. They come to the Americans and say, we have a deal, let's make a deal. I accept what you want. That's all it's for, okay? There is no real war going on. It's a financial war to see if someone inside the regime wakes up and starts pressuring those who make the decisions to reach an agreement with the Americans. There are rumors that protests have already started in Iran, slowly, once again. Today, I saw videos of celebrations in Tehran. After the announcement of the new sanctions against Iran, the people, some of the people, of course, are celebrating this. Now let's go inside Iran, because the consequences have reached there as well. Iranian opposition channels published videos today showing fuel shortages at gas stations. The cities mentioned are the capital Tehran and two other large cities in the east and southeast of the country. Where there is still fuel, huge lines can be seen in these images. But I'm going to mark this here as material from the channel What Is This? But we know there's some truth to it, because they actually take the videos from there. But this kind of image matches the rest of the picture I've been putting together with you for a long time. The currency is worth nothing. 2 million reais per dollar. Exports have dried up, completely dried up, and now there's no fuel at the gas station. And this is where I go back to that conversation I had with you earlier about the effect on the average citizen. Gas station lines don't affect the Revolutionary Guard colonel. It affects the taxi driver, the delivery person, and the small business owner. That's the price those people are paying for the choices made by those who run their country. And look at the irony of the situation, right? Because Iran has some of the largest oil and gas reserves on the planet. There's a fuel shortage at the gas stations in one of the countries with the most fuel underground. It's not a lack of natural resources. It's the consequence of diverting refinery capacity, money, and engineering on missile programs, on militias in other countries, and on the nuclear program. And speaking of who's in charge, there was also movement today in the Iranian capital. The commander of the Pakistani army landed in Iran. He has already returned to Pakistan today. He landed in Iran today. He spoke with someone there. He has already appeared in photos from the meeting with the Iranian president and the Speaker of Parliament. He is trying, according to reports, to pave the way for negotiations between Iran and the United States. Look at what this means in terms of image on the same day. Look at this. The Americans announced the largest economic isolation campaign ever mounted against that country. The regime opens the door, and it opens it for a foreign general. And this general came to propose talks. They want to talk. Whoever is comfortable, my friends, doesn't receive a mediator in such a hurry. Did you get that, Mortadella? If they were doing so well, they wouldn't receive this guy. There's no reason at all. And look who this mediator is too. You need to understand, because this also says a lot. He's a military chief of a Muslim country that has nuclear weapons. And who signed the defense pact with Saudi Arabia and Turkey 2 weeks ago? It's not Europe mediating. It's not Russia mediating. And it's not China mediating. It's a neighbor from the Islamic world itself that's carrying the American message into Iran. This is humiliation disguised as diplomacy. Now, I want to know if Saudi Arabia were attacked by Iran, like they've been attacked several times, if Turkey would join this war against Iran, because that's what the pact says. Anyway, that's just my observation. And there was also a reaction here at home. The Israeli Prime Minister published a message congratulating the President and the American Secretary of the Treasury for the new sanctions. He wrote that both of them are rightly making the dictatorship and anyone who helps it continue its aggression pay a heavy price. I come back to the Prime Minister because he made another very important statement. But before that, let's look at the other side of this same coin. While the Americans tighten the squeeze on the country, the rest of the region is not standing still at all. Now we pay close attention. Each neighbor is rushing to choose whose side they'll be on the next day. And that's exactly what's happening with that defense pact I've been showing you over the past few weeks. That defense pact signed in Mecca between Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Pakistan is attracting interest. The government of Bangladesh confirmed today that there are ongoing discussions about their possible entry into the agreement. Bangladesh has more than 170 million inhabitants and a gigantic army. Add that to Pakistan and Turkey, which has the second largest army in the Western Alliance. While the Iranian axis shrinks, this other Sunni bloc grows, and it grows by signing papers, not by firing any missiles, at least for now. And I still don't know what this bloc is going to be. A year from now, but it's going to be very different from what it is today, folks. What I do know is that it was born after Israel showed that it can reach anywhere in the region. We have to make that very clear. And now the Prime Minister comes back here, so we can talk about what happened. He gave a phone interview to a channel here. And in the middle of that interview, he revealed information that no one expected. You guys on this channel already know about it. He said that Iran tried to take the lives of 2 of his children. And when the reporter asked if that came from intelligence material, he didn't give any details. He just repeated the same phrase, that Iran tried to take the lives of 2 of his children. He didn't say which of the 2 children, he didn't say when, he didn't say where, and he didn't say how close it came to happening. The context of the conversation was different. And this is important for you to understand. He was answering about the personal security of candidates, at a time when the protection of his main opponent in the October election is being debated here. And that's when he said that in this case, security is not a luxury, and that without it, the Iranians get what they want. He also said that he asked the head of the Internal Security Service to provide adequate protection to any candidate for prime minister. This story is going around the whole world now, this story about his son. And I need to tell you something here very carefully as well. This subject is not new to those who follow this channel. I've already talked about it here. I also gave details. Those of you who were on that live stream remember what I said at the time. If you remember, write about this situation. What I can't do anymore now is repeat those details, because that ended up under military censorship afterwards. And here in Israel, there's a very clear rule. Certain security matters can only be published with authorization. And those who live here and do what I do respect this rule. Before, I talked about it because it was allowed, and now it's forbidden. It was actually today. Today, it was the Prime Minister himself who released the information in an interview. He can say what he said. I'm still limited to what's already been released, so I stick to what's public. And what's public is already enough, because you already know that. And now, what backs up what he said? In July, the Ministerial Committee here approved reinforced protection for his wife and children. Protection at his level isn't approved just because of a politician's whim. It's approved when the security service brings a concrete threat to the table. His opponents are saying something else. I'll make a note of it here. They say that talking about this less than 2 months before the election here in Israel helps whoever is behind in the polls. I'm not going to get into the election campaign here because that's not the subject of this channel. What I'm going to tell you is this. Threats against the families of Israeli leaders are not an unusual scenario. There have already been cells dismantled in Europe and Latin America targeting Israeli targets. And the Iranian regime has a documented history of doing this. That's what happened in Argentina in the 1990s, in 2 attacks that together took the lives of more than 100 people. That's what happened in Bulgaria in 2012 against a bus carrying Israeli tourists. And that's how it was in several operations that were stopped before they happened in Europe, Africa, and Asia. This regime doesn't treat a leader's family or a leader's relative as a red line. It treats them as a target. In the same interview, he responded to the accusation that the operation in Syria was carried out for electoral reasons. He rejected the accusation and said the decision came from serious discussions initiated by the army itself. And he said that all those responsible for security recommended preventing the Turkish installation in Syria. This ties directly into what I already told you yesterday when the American envoy said the opposite of what he is saying in the interview. And now I'll finish with a topic that almost no one talked about today, and that I think is the most important for the short and long term. Guys, this is a hot topic. Take a look. I don't think you've seen this anywhere, but it's extremely important for Israel. A joint air exercise took place in Egypt between the Egyptian Air Force and the Chinese Air Force. The name of the exercise is Eagles of Civilization. And then something happened there that had never happened before. Chinese fighter jets trained in simulated combat, simulated air combat, against French fighter jets from the Egyptian Air Force. Never before had a Chinese fighter jet trained for combat against a Western-made aircraft. China sent about 6 fighter jets, plus aerial refueling planes, an early warning aircraft, and other support assets. And there's a detail that changes the scale of this whole thing. This group, my friends, flew more than 6,000 kilometers to get to Egypt. It's not about the exercise itself, it's about the message it carries. China just showed that it can deploy a complete air force 6,000 kilometers from home. And it did this within our region, training against Western technology. Egypt, which has a peace agreement with Israel and has received American military aid for decades, opened its skies for this training. For you to understand the scale of this, think about what this really means, folks. Training against French fighter jets. The fighter jet, the Rafale, is the same plane that flies in several Western air forces and also in the Arab world. When a Chinese pilot trains against a fighter like that, he goes home with real data in hand, extremely important information. He knows how that plane maneuvers, how the radar detects the plane, and where the limits of that machine are. This is priceless, and you can't buy it from a catalog. And there's another thing, there's another side to this story as well, which is ours. Egypt is the country with which Israel signed the first peace agreement in the region in 1979. It's the neighbor with whom there has been coordination, right? Security coordination for decades, especially on the border with Gaza. And they are present in large numbers in the Sinai Desert. Just to remind you, they are still there. Many Egyptian tanks. When the Chinese fighter jet lands in this neighboring country, along with an early warning aircraft, this is something that those who plan Israel's defense take into account. I hope it's also being taken into account and that someone here is watching what's happening in Egypt. I'm not saying that Egypt has become an enemy now, that's not it, okay? What I'm saying is that the skies over this region are no longer exclusively Western. And this is new and unprecedented. And just look at the pattern throughout the whole day. While the Americans tighten the economic siege on one side of the map, China is building its presence on the other side, without firing a shot, quietly working its way in from the edges. And before I wrap up, here's what you need to watch for in the coming days. The first sign is in the banking sector. If Iranian bank branches start closing in foreign countries, and this is likely to happen, it means the siege is tightening. The second sign is maritime. If Iran really tries to detain any of those 45 ships, especially Saudi or Emirati ones, the problem stops being economic. And the third sign is political, what the Pakistani general took back with him when he left Iran, because he has already left. These three signs are worth more than any headline you'll read tomorrow morning. And this is where I finish with today's Hebrew word. Write it down. Bidut. Bidut means isolation. When we were during the coronavirus days, we used to say we were in bidut. Whoever was sick, right? They would be in bidut. They would be in isolation. It's also the word that gives its name to the operation that started today, and that's its stated goal, to leave the Iranian regime isolated from the world. But isolation is something that can be measured in two ways. It's measured by what goes out, oil, money, and business, and by what comes in, a mediator, a new ally, a foreign plane landing right here near Israel. And today Iran became more isolated in the first sense than it was yesterday. And on the same day, a foreign general landed in their capital with a message, and Chinese fighter jets landed right next to Israel. And I'm still here, straight from the Judean mountains, putting the pieces together one by one, the way we know the mainstream media will never ever do for you like this. Thank you, Adriana, for the super sticker. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Wow, so many super stickers. Thanks. Really, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Yeah, dear David, it's tough. I've already hit the like button. Thanks, my brother. Thank you. The live stream is long. It can't be helped. Mortadelas, leave your like too. You are part of this channel. Thanks to you, the channel has grown so much. So give it a like right now. For those asking about the iBest, it should start. Look, here's Davey showing up. Let me put it here. Look. Oh, I'm here on this list. Look, it's not open for voting yet, okay, guys? Here, look, best top 10. It's going to start, I think it's on the 27th. Either the 27th or 28th. It starts, voting opens here. I'm here, okay, for those who don't know. I'm counting on your vote too, so I can take this next step and reach Brazil's top 10. Mortadela, go vote, man. Don't let this chance slip by. Go there and click it. Nobody needs to know you voted. We won't tell anyone on the channel that you voted on my channel, okay? I'll keep quiet. I won't tell anyone about it. I promise you. Quickly, let's go to the comments. Good evening. Congratulations. Thanks. Very good. Does the oil that arrives in Israel go through Turkey, Davi? No, Rita Silva, it doesn't. I haven't seen anything anywhere about this exercise between China and Egypt. That's right, only here, Janaina. It's only here that this news shows up. The exercise hasn't ended over there, folks. It hasn't ended. They're still there in one way or another. As soon as I have more information about this, I'll share it here with you. I've already liked it. Thanks, Davey. Top 10. Thanks. My friends, these are the latest updates. If anything serious happens in the Middle East, I'll be back at any moment, as always. If not, we'll meet again tomorrow at the usual time, here around noon, 1 o'clock in the afternoon in Israel, and 7 o'clock in the morning, around 7 or 8 in the morning there in Brazil. Hugs to everyone, my friends, and see you at the next live stream.